Welcome to Collingwood Rant. I'm Sly.
CSM.
Spook, out of 10, how angry are you?
CSM.
Spook, what happened to our opening joke?
CSM.
Do you think they might have just played a little bit earlier Saturday twilight?
Let me just think about this. CSM.
Alright, only look at the game, nothing else but the game which ended our season.
So many before it.
Yeah. Let's look at I'm going to break it down into different sections. Let's begin with selections. Levi Greenwood out, ACL. Jordan Ngoe out with the hamstring. Ben Reid and James Aish in. Were you surprised by the selections?
No. I think we ummed and ahed about this one. Reid was a bit of a gamble. I think I still probably... I can't remember what I said last week. I probably would have preferred Varks in hindsight.
Okay, so let me now qualify that. It pissed down with rain.
Definitely Varks.
Did you still think they should go for Reid?
No, but I think, to be fair, the weather report was meant to be dry, so who knows? I mean, we sort of fucked up in the same way that Chris Scott fucked up 2 weeks earlier.
I believe the weather report was just foxing. It poured down with,
It was like a monsoon.
I think the Ben Reid selection was a massive error, given that even if it didn't rain, it was very wet. They played him to be the relief ruckman, and that was basically it. So you're going to get 15 minutes out of him, and the other 85 minutes you're going to hope he might do something up forward in a wet game, and then you end up poured, and we're too tall. With a guy who hadn't played in, when's the last time Ben Reid played? About 2016?
Round 15, I think it was.
Yeah, who hasn't played for quite a while, and you had a number of those guys. Aish was another one, and you've brought too many of these guys in who aren't ready for football. Varco, at least he's only coming off about a 3-week absence from football. Smaller target would have played a lot better in the wet.
He certainly would have socketed a goal through. Not looking at anybody brown.
How'd you feel about the umpiring?
That was shit house.
It actually favoured us 24-17, but did you feel...
It was the constant things that were... There's not so much about the ones that was paid, it's the things that were just overlooked all the way through.
Well, like Grundy being murdered.
The amount of times that Grundy was pushed out, it was just ridiculous. Yeah, and if you're not going to get a fair old look at it, then what's the fucking point of those guys being out there? You might as well just let the players adjudicate the game themselves.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. But, having said that, do you feel the umpiring is where we lost it?
No.
Okay, so now let's break down the game quarter by quarter. First quarter, we kicked 1-13 to 1-3. We led by, 3-4 points.
Mm-hmm.
They look like they really, even though it was raining, they had clean use of the ball, they moved it forward, they did well.
Yep.
We were very scrappy, fumbled, all that sort of shit. So let me just ask you this. Coming off the bye, was that a concern?
I think, this is my underlying concern throughout the final series, and I think
you did say this. You said you would have preferred to play ongoing.
Yeah, and I think it really starts to flag that this extra break. So you essentially end up playing one game of football in about 3 or 4 weeks or something.
4 weeks.
It's just absurd.
Well, Ron Conley had a stat on Twitter saying since they've introduced this, 4 of the teams who've won the qualifying out of the 8 teams who've gone through, only 4 have won the prelim. Whereas prior to the bye, there's only 1 had ever lost coming, because that they weren't getting that interrupted football.
It robs you of that momentum, and you've been the best sides. Well, 3 of them were the best sides. You deserve that continuous run. You get that 1 week off if you win the first game, and I think that sort of always worked out well. But you lose that drive going.
Well, the stupidity of the bye is that only the top teams should get an advantage, but now you're just saying everyone gets a week off. So what's the fucking point? You'd probably prefer to come up from 5th or 6th. I mean, Alston Clarkson, he said it a few years ago that if teams keep coming up from that bottom 4 of the 8, it's probably going to revamp the way coaches look at their teams going into finals. You texted me really early in the Richmond-Geelong game saying Richmond looked scratchy. They did look scratchy. They took about a half to get going. I thought we looked really like we lacked touch and run and even just some, knowledge of where players were and shit like that. Whereas GWS played with a lot more momentum. But having said that, our intensity was really low. Now, I don't know how much you can attribute that to lack of continuity.
I think that's almost like a little bit of over-bloated confidence going into the game that this was just a foregone conclusion. And I don't blame...
We're going to get to that later.
Players, because we were just as bad.
Second quarter. So, it was basically even.
What, no one scored?
No, I think we scored 1 to each. It wasn't really any great shift in the balance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the one thing I found in the first half was I thought GWS could have been up by 3-4 goals, and they just didn't take their chances. Whereas with us, every time we went forward, it was really that, what we've seen a bit with Collingwood, just took so much hard work to get a shot at goal. You didn't really get just those chaos-type opportunistic goals. And
Conditions would have been a factor in that.
there would have been, but the thing is, if conditions being what they were, you're not going to play a finesse game. Now, one of the problems, and we'll look at the stats a bit later, is Collingwood at times seem to play a finesse game, which just kept getting undone. Whereas GWS, they handled the ball a lot more surely, but they weren't playing with such finesse. Half time, are you concerned?
No, I think we were fairly level pecking score-wise for them, weren't we? Look, I don't remember. There was a fair bit of beer consumed on that day, but I don't remember being overly... at this point of the game, I don't remember overly concerned, no.
All right. So,
I thought we probably...
You probably expected them to do what Richmond did, which is come out and start to get the mojo. But the third quarter, we kicked 3 points, they kicked 5-2. They got a few of those opportunistic goals. They got that real bullshit one when Phil Lanston pushed out Grundy and had a shot. And at that point, it looked like in those conditions, to win, we'd have to, kick twice as much as we'd already, or even more. We'd have to triple our score, which we didn't even look like we could get a goal.
Well, we hadn't scored, I think, at the end of the third quarter. Yeah. We hadn't scored for about 70-odd minutes.
Now, we did that against Geelong also, we didn't score a goal for 60 minutes.
Yeah, it's a bit worrying.
So there is something there for the club to look at.
Anymore.
Not to, and we'll talk about recruiting at some other point in the future, but when you look at clubs like Richmond that going out, getting a Tom Lynch, and even Porter Adelaide years ago getting Charlie Dixon, and really identifying genuine key position forwards, whereas, and this is no...
Well, you don't think Tohill's going to cut it?
Jeez, you can hope. With no disrespect intended to Mason Cox, it's still that experimentation. We're going to take this 211cm giant and turn him into a full forward. And I've always said, if that was the solution, every club would just be getting the tallest way they could fight and say, you stay there. And I think Cox is massively maligned at the club. I think he gets pinged when he gets abused by opposition. He gets double, triple teamed. He doesn't get the ball delivered quickly, so they don't give him any great chance of marking it. But he's not genuinely, I think, the answer as a key forward.
No, I agree.
Last quarter, Giants kick a goal. Game looks over. You look like you were about to kill a few people. You pretty much for that whole last quarter. But then we came really hard. Kicked 4-5 to 1-1. We were a goal down for about 7 minutes to play. Main kicked the point, couldn't make the distance from about 12 metres.
Yeah, that was disappointing.
Taylor Adams had a quick snap which hit the post.
Yep.
I thought we were way too chaotic in the way we tried to move the ball in. There was no system. We sort of played like there was only 25 seconds left. The whole last 7 minutes and just boot the shit out of it and hope something comes of it. And I think this highlighted the one thing, which I believe we've been saying, is that last quarter when Josh Thomas got a couple of opportunistic goals and no one was touched on replay. It wasn't corrected on review. But it showed that they really missed that opportunistic forward. If they don't have someone who's going to crumb, snap, kick these, goals from nothing. All the forwards they got, from De Goey to Elliott to Stevenson to Hoskin Elliott even, they're all these really sort of lead-up forwards, and if the ball comes to the ground, then I'll make some space. Stevenson's goal early on was making space. It wasn't that I'm going to dribble it in from the boundary. Thomas, for about 15 minutes, played that Didac, Cracker, Leon Davis type game, and it showed we really need that sort of forward in there. And you probably could have used that sort of guy in the 2018 Grand Final. Came really hard at GWS. They held their nerve. In the end, siren goes, we lose by 4 points.
Stop if you've heard this one before.
Yep. Now, the real interesting thing is I went through the stats.
We need to get bigger beers. It's too hard to reach for those ones.
Yeah. It's a furphy, in case anybody is asking.
If the shit fits.
Yes. So, team stats, disposals, 337 to 338. So, we are one down. Kicks, 209 to 238. Handballs, 128 to 100. So, we handballed 28 times more than they did.
Which you'd almost expect in those conditions.
Oh, you'd expect to kick handball less. You'd expect to be kicking more, I think, in the rain.
I don't know. I think you get a little bit more direct sometimes, I think, with the handballing. That's just my opinion. Well, you could be.
But it depends on how they're handballing. If they're like getting the one handball out and then kicking long, fine. But if they're handballing around to try and find space, and this is one of the problems which I'll get to as I go through the players, is I thought we really tried to finesse. Inside 50s, 53 to 49. 1%ers, 57 to 72. I don't know what the crap they are. Now, looking at individual players, Pendles, 18 disposals, 12 kicks, 6 handballs, 9 tackles. Sidebottom, 9 kicks, 7 handballs, 5 tackles. I'm sure somebody will tell me he's elite still. And not just bagging Sidebottom because there's a lot of players with him. Taylor Adams, I put this to you before, 20 disposals. How would you break that down?
I'd probably guess off the top of my head that he had 20 kicks.
Yeah, and 0 handballs, which is amazing for the sort of player he is. Adam Treloar, 7 kicks, 15 handballs, 8 tackles. So that to me, like I didn't really notice it as much when we're watching, but that to me suggested those two guys were each doing the other's role, where Adam should have been feeding it out. Treloar got 8 tackles. Tom Phillips, 12 kicks, 6 handballs, 3 tackles. Rupert Wills, 16 kicks, 3 handballs, 12 tackles. So apparently Wills is the quickest to 100 tackles in terms of games, which we didn't mention a few weeks ago.
He's a beast.
So that entire midfield really struggled. There's not one dominant performance in that entire midfield.
No, and it didn't half show. And we get into the clearance numbers.
Now we're going to get there in a second.
All right.
Play some elevated music while I drink beer. Now you look at the defenders. Jeremy Howe, 20 kicks, 8 handballs, 28 disposals, 7 marks, 2 tackles. Jack Crisp, 26 disposals, 16 kicks, 10 handballs, 7 marks, 9 tackles. Braden Maynard, 14 kicks, 9 handballs, 3 marks, 8 tackles. So you got a lot of possessions in defence. Howe's in the 2 finals has been really good.
He had a great final series.
Darcy Moore was generally good.
Yep.
Been my criticism of him the whole year. He can be too loose in manning up and play a bit too attacking, which really gets exposed if the ball goes over the top. This is the one that is really interesting with Brodie Grundy. He had 25 disposals, 73 taps.
All right, I'm just going to sit here while you talk for the next hour.
73 taps, 13 of those to advantage. So I don't know where the other 60 went.
GWS players.
Now, the clearances...
Or his feet.
So with 73 taps to like 16 or something. All the clearances, 35 to 54 in their favour.
This is the bit that I just don't understand, is how that you can dominate the ruck so much and lose the clearances by such a big margin.
This has been our criticism the whole year, that you get these numbers in terms of getting first touch to the ball, and he's not translating to midfield's first use of the ball.
Yep.
And the one thing I think, if you actually watch Grundy closely, I'm going to criticise him here, is when he excels, it's as a ruck rover. And you'll see the things he excels are the tapping it to himself and then running on, or, second efforts, third efforts, and playing as a midfielder. I thought in the first half, as a midfielder, he was great. He was like giving a lot of linkages. As just a genuine ruckman who's going to tap the ball down a teammate's throat, he doesn't have the influence that you feel he should have for the amount of dominance he exerts on the game.
No, I agree.
And this was a criticism of him in the grand final. He got like 60 taps in that game too, and we just didn't benefit. Now, if you look at the numbers throughout the year, he is constantly getting his hand to the ball. He's getting insane numbers of tap outs, but it is not going to the midfielders. No. Now, I'm not going to criticise Grundy exclusively because we've talked about there is an issue with that relationship. Why does that relationship between Grundy and the midfielders, and this is the midfield which was vaunted as the greatest midfield in the history of football.
That should have been a warning sign.
Yeah. Well, why can they not work out how to capitalise on these taps? And as a fallback, which we've touted in the past also, it would have been great in conditions like this. If Grundy is going to get his hand to the ball, but it's not going to go to the midfielder's mind, not just thump the shit out of it and get like 20 metres, 25 metres out of a punch.
Yeah, especially in those conditions. Yeah. That should have been the logical outcome.
Now, there is a massive problem here at Collingwood.
Have you ever seen Grundy punch the ball forward, though?
He did it a couple of times, I think it was against Bulldogs, where he started doing it, where they were setting up really tight around him, and then he just started going over him. And that should be something that he does just even to introduce uncertainty. That, one of the problems I think with Grundy's tap work, I'm not a ruckman, one of the problems is he really finesses it straight down and then opposition run straight through it. Now, I don't know why, if he's going to do that, our players don't actually understand that's going to happen. They're roving to him every week. You think someone would click and go, hey.
It's only been, 22 weeks?
Well, it happened last year too, and I don't know, I think Anthony Rock is the ruck coach. Love the ruck because he's criminally underrated at Collingwood, but he was a centre-half forward relief ruckman. Why not get someone like Darren Jolie down there to actually...
He's got a bit of extra time on his hands these days.
Is he?
He's separated from his wife.
No, we should have a lot of time. But Jolie talked about when he came to Collingwood, he had to teach the mids to rove offensively because they had been roving defensively for so long because they got used to losing taps. This side needs to actually work out, hey, this is what's going to happen, this is where you're going to tap it, this is where we're going to try and capitalise, and this is how we're going to change those numbers of, instead of 13 to advantage out of 73 taps to, I'm not going to say an absurd number like half that, but you should really be getting, I don't know, I would have thought about 25 taps to advantage. And if you look at Nick...
I'd be aiming for 75% of them.
If you look at Nick Nat and Gaunt, they get a lot of taps to advantage.
They're very direct with the way that they tap too.
Yeah.
You can see when they're in that full flight, and they're hitting the ball, it's palmed to somebody that's usually very close or it lands in front of them.
I actually think Mason Cox is actually good in tapping it to advantage.
Yeah. Well, he sees it about 10 minutes before everyone else.
Yeah, but they need to work it out, and it fucking annoys me that you got Buckley, one of the best midfielders I've seen, Harvey, champion midfielder, Hocking, champion midfielder, and not one of these guys can teach the ruck and the mid to work together. And this is happening all year. And I really thought, at some point we're going to debut like, hey, here's something we've been working on the sly, and now we're going to debut it, and you're not going to actually know what the fuck to do. And they didn't do it. They just kept with the same fallible strategy of let me just tap it straight down and let the opposition rove it. And given the calibre of the midfield, it's regularly lost centre clearances this year. So what the fuck is going on there?
And that was one of GWS's great strengths is their scoring ability from winning clearances. It's been telegraphed all year that they're very dominant at it.
Well, they were dominant at it on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
It's really that headbanging thing of just hitting your head against the same wall, expecting a different result, and it's never happened. So why do you keep expecting it to happen?
Structure.
Well, the structure's not working, so that needs to be addressed. Now, if the midfielders, Pendlebury I was a bit surprised he was an AA. I thought he had a good year. I didn't realise it was like that good. Sidebottom's had a really average year. I'd be interested to see if he has been carrying an injury and he's been struggling. Trelaw's had numbers, but they just haven't really translated to,
anything damaging.
Yeah,
He's had his moments, but not overall damaging for the amount of times
We got about 7,000 possessions in the year.
And we've talked about it. It really is a misnomer how many numbers you get in high possession games about how much work you're actually doing. Because you can get 10, 20 possessions just moving the ball sideways.
Well, you will, usually. You look at the way... you go back 20 years ago, if someone got 30 or 40 possessions, it was amazing. But now that's a pretty regular thing. And then
we're starting to nudge 50.
Yeah, because it's like people are just going backwards, sideways, and and what you see a lot is they go all the way across the ground and go, oh, there's no avenue here, let's go all the way back.
The switch of the switch of the switch.
Yeah. And the other thing too with the midfield is, and this was happening when we were really slumping, there was a lot of those sort of quick kick around the corner to no ones, which is like, let me just snap it to get it the fuck out of here. And you think, sure, that can't be the game plan to have absolutely no composure. I'll buy that I'll buy the snap out of panic kick if you could put about 40 to 50 metres on it. If you're just kicking it like 20 metres, you're just killing everyone and hoping for something that's not going to happen. But
you see a lot of sides that do that now, that panic kick especially out of the defensive side of things. And then the opposition side usually have one or two blokes floating free, waiting to intercept.
Yeah.
And you think, well, what's the fucking point in booting it out there when you know the opposition is going to just sit there, camp, and then deliver it back in again?
Well, this is the thing I don't understand too, is if you're going to do that, why are your teammates not reading it? I mean, it's like Trelaw does that little snap kick quite a bit. And I think surely when players forward of the ball see that he's got the ball and he's not facing goal side so he can run, but he's going to probably just turn and snap it. Why aren't you already running forward to anticipate like a 20 to 30 metre kick? And they don't do it. although we won against pretty mediocre opposition the last 4 weeks, ranging from Gold Coast to Melbourne to Adelaide to Essendon,
Yep.
I instead of the time, but Geelong, they really played a terrible game against us where they just didn't move the ball, so they fell into the strategy that we were employing. But just sort of saying that I think some of those weaknesses that we hoped were that they were working on and just getting right, they weren't actually working to any great extent. It was just that we were playing average teams, not letting us get away with shit we shouldn't have gotten away with. I mean, maybe that Essendon game was a bit of a predictor of what was going to come, because Essendon really, being totally undermanned, they really pushed us. And we were just hoping, we just had our eyes in the finals and shit like that. But when you look at the 2 finals, we played, one good half against Geelong. We didn't play one good half against Geelong. We played a good quarter and a bit against Geelong. And then once the goal went off, it really fell to pieces. And we thought, maybe they were just playing tempo football because they were 2 down. But that really disappointed me. Forward line just didn't work, didn't function at all. For any, cohesiveness or any threat.
No, and you look at Hoskin Elliott again just did nothing. There's just too many. And Mio to a point. Just did nothing as well. And so they were probably 2 of the cogs that were working quite well last year when things were going well. And the swoop squad was going insane, and we had everyone bobbing up every week and dobbing goals. It just didn't replicate this year for whatever reason.
But you probably again have to look at the influence Mason Cox had there to contest. To actually, the great thing with Cox, I think, is when he goes through. So when the ball's kicked to him and he's got no hope of marking it, he doesn't go for a mark. He'll actually go for a tap. And you see some of the tap work where he'll turn his hand around against momentum and push it back toward his players and all that sort of shit. Cox got murdered by our usage of the ball this year. I think he's still got more goals. So even though people are saying, he's had a worse year, I think statistically he actually had a better year. But the way we were using him just wasn't functioning, and it wasn't having that flow-on effect to get to the rest of the forwards working. And then you had the things of like Stevenson missing for 10 years, issues with fitness for players. Josh Thomas played terribly for a big patch there, and Hoskin Elliott was terrible for a patch there. Varco was, not doing that great.
Yeah, it wasn't very settled all year, was it?
And it didn't develop that cohesion to actually develop or pose a threat.
And you need that, I think, sometimes when you realise you play off each other so well because you know what your teammates are going to be doing. It was just changing too much to actually gel that way.
But the real disappointment is, and this is the question you touched upon at the start, do you think some complacency settled in that everybody, including the players and the staff, thought they'd win and just get through?
I think that was a problem. Because, I certainly felt it the way too. I was coming in with a mate on the train, and we just kept talking about the next week, and I just kept saying, I know we just got to get through this week as well. But you just didn't talk that much about this particular game. Now, if our mindset was on the following week, then I don't think the club was probably as bad in that respect, but I think there was an element there that they clearly thought that this was just going to be a given, and especially with Whitfield and Green being out, and they're 2 massive outs, that really then made it feel like, we don't even have to work that hard for this one, potentially. And the fucking rain, seriously. Where did that weather come from?
I can tell you.
The footy gods. They hate us.
Leading into the week, I had people talking about the grand final. I was on the train and started speaking to the Bulldog supporter. He goes, I think he'll do Richmond next week. I go, we've got to get past the day. He goes, he'll win this one. And a lot of people were saying that to me. We're going to get past this. And I say, no, just focus on now. And they go, no, we'll beat them. And, they've got players out. And everyone had that expectation that would win relatively comfortably. Although the players would say consciously they're focused only on now, I do really think how much of their mindset was a week ahead. Now, in saying that too, I actually feel, and they can tell me I'm wrong.
I think you're wrong.
Happens sometimes. The whole year seriously had a fucking sense of entitlement about it. Like, hey, we just lost the grand final by this much. Therefore, we're going to bounce back and just romp it in this year, and it'll be a year of redemption and that. And there was that whole, even in the first 6 weeks when we were playing okay, and we were still saying, well, there's a few concerns here. And then we were flagging concerns when it was all unravelling, and people go, no, it's all right. And then it totally unravelled, and people are going, okay, there's an issue here. And I had fellow supporters telling me, well, forget about the flags this year, it's not going to happen for this reason or that reason. And then it started to come good again. And I'll tell you one thing that really fucking annoys me. I understand why people do it because I've done it myself. But when Hawthorn won that final round against West Coast and we jumped up into the top 4, and then we got to play Geelong at the MCG instead of having to travel elsewhere or shit like that, and then Midfield does appendicitis and Green gets reported and suspended, and all that sort of stuff is like everyone's going, oh, it's our year, it's our year. You know, things are falling into place, and then people are circling. What's the word? I don't know. People were distributing that fucking stat about, oh, in 1910 Collingwood won the grand final, but they lost in 1911, but then they beat Richmond in 1919.
The omens.
And it's like, yes, the omens. It's like, and I get those a lot, and I understand why people do it. I'm a superstitious person, too.
Is that why you keep wearing sunglasses?
Yeah, and I just got to say, though, one thing. You are fucking totally in control of your own fate. I don't give a shit about injuries or whatever, or omens or whatever. It was up to you to win. You weren't owed a win, okay? And to me, this loss is almost as deflating as the 2018 grand final loss.
Oh, I definitely think it is.
You know, because...
As Buckley said in his press conference, it just feels like a wasted year.
I think it is a wasted year, and I can't remember the author's name, Tom Morris from Fox Sports or something. He goes, when he has a chance to reflect on that, he'll probably realise that's not quite right because he got some development into players and stuff like that, into the team, and they all learned and shit like that. And this is what the comment I made to you earlier is, football has this cyclical nature of you get new players replacing the old and all that sort of shit. You really would have hoped that this year you got some development into Nathan Murphy, Isaac Quaynor, and Will Kelly as your defenders of the future. Murphy and Kelly barely played this year.
You could throw Taylor Brown into that too.
Tyler Brown. Yeah, he's been there for a couple of years now. And this is, again, Collingwood doesn't have an injury issue, apparently.
Not as bad as Richmond's.
No. They don't have an injury issue, but the thing is, and this is the reason I defended Buckley for 4 years when we were doing shit, is like, you kept bringing these guys like Scharenberg and Freeman and all that in, and they were getting injured. You had all these players going out and no one coming in to replicate that quality, so they're going to struggle. And it's the same thing now. You're getting players like Roughhead and Howe and Dunn and all these guys getting older, and the guys who should be coming up to claim those spots are not getting development into them. So either their development's going to be delayed, or it's just not going to happen because they're going to get so many physical impediments that their bodies are just going to go, fuck it, I can't do it anymore. And bang, 3 years down the track, we learn, oh, hang on, Will Kelly mightn't work out. Let's go now look for a new fullback. You compare that to 2006 onwards, where you had guys like Presty, Wakeland, Clement, who were on the way out, and then we recruited guys like Reed and Nathan Brown, and, you got guys like O'Brien and Maxwell and Heater in there. John Anthony was there, and you had all this new guard taking over as the old guard were going out, and that's why they segued so smoothly from one generation to the next, and they didn't actually miss finals. I thought after the 2006 first semi-final lost the Bulldogs, I thought, that's it, we're fucked, we've got all these players going out, who's coming in? But then you had Pendles and Daisy come in, you had Beams and Sidebottom and all these guys, and it just was this perfect transition, which is definitely not fucking happening here. There is a gulf between the players, the team of today, and the team of tomorrow, because apparently there's no injury problem at Collingwood, even though for the 8th year in a row we've listed in the top 8 injuries of...
You're bang on. We're just not getting any games into these up-and-coming players, and we're relying too much on the recycle players coming in. And they're doing admirable jobs when they're coming in. There's nothing you can complain about with the likes of Howe or Ruffy with the years that they've had, but... you're just not seeing that second tier coming through. There's some of these guys have been on the list now 2-3 years, still haven't cracked a senior game.
Well, Nathan Murphy played a few last year, and you thought, here's one I'm hoping will come on. And here's a guy in the middle of the year where we were having all the injuries, and they were trying Appleby and Quaynor and Noble. They had to go recruit, a guy from, the SNFL to fill this spot because of their fucking injuries. That's where you were hoping that these guys would come in and, just make at least have a bit of experience and shit. At least Quaynor got a few games before, for some reason, his feet went on him. It's just insane that...
Oh yeah, Boyle's in his feet, and I'm not even kidding.
It is fucking insane. And then you look at DeGoey, DeGoey's constantly having these hamstring issues now.
Hamstrings at Collingwood? Surely not.
More hamstrings. I mean, it's just insane.
But there's no problem. There's no problem there. No problem whatsoever.
You should just be all...
It's just bad luck.
Well, it is apparently, but there's fucking obviously a problem. And it just really frustrates me because I think if you look at the teams around you, Brisbane surprised me this year. I didn't expect that. I thought...
But that shows, I mean, they had a pretty much intact list all year, though.
And they got developed into it, so they're going to be better for it next year. I still think Carlton are coming. I know I say that for...
You've been saying that for 20 years.
But I think if you look at that fucking list with Walsh and Cripps and Curnow and McKay and all these guys...
They've got some special talent, no doubt.
And if you look at like when T took over, they won, 6 games and lost 5, and then about 3 of those they lost by, a kick or something. If he coached a whole year, they would have probably won 9-10 games. They might have been challenged for the bottom of the 8. Now they've got that development into those players. Next year, they're going to... I'm not saying they're going to win a flag next year or something, but... as we've shown, it's not that big a gulf between, hey, we're struggling but we're competitive to now we're winning, which Brisbane also did. And where is our talent coming from? Where is our influx of the next generation coming from? I see teams like, and I understand they've been sitting on the bottom floor, but teams like Brisbane and Carlton and all that, getting that talent in. And the thing is, okay, fine, they've been sitting on the bottom, but you know what? They've been sitting on the bottom, so they have gotten this fucking talent. Where are we going to do that? You got a limited window to actually do something, and it really pisses me off that this year they fucking blew it, and it really felt to me like they played the year like they just thought, it's going to happen for us, it's going to click, and we're going to dominate, and then all this shit was happening with injuries, with Stevenson, and all that sort of crap, and it was like, oh, well, got into a prelim, we're going to make it, and then they just fall over, and seriously, those first 3 quarters, they were the worst 3 quarters I've seen in the Collingwood final ever. And I saw like the 84 prelim against Essendon where they beat us by 20 goals. It really, to me, was a totally inept, flat, lethargic performance, which also lacked, as we've complained this year, leadership. It lacked that guy to stand up and go, I'll win it. It lacked that Patrick Cripps type game of, oh fuck, I'll get the clearances, I'll kick the goals. No one did it.
No, and De Goey is the most likely one to be doing that, and you can't get on the park.
And even if he got past this final, he was still only going to be like a 90% chance to play and all that sort of shit. No, in Collingwood, him and Elliott and Moore would have done hamstrings running through the banner, because that's what we've been programmed to expect. So I'm just really fucking disappointed, and I don't, for as much as we rant about the club, I mean, I love the club. I've been a member for 40 years and shit like that. I follow them and all that, but this fucking frustrates the shit out of me because it's really a limp effort. And if you went out, like, I've got to give GWS credit, they played well, but that last 20 minutes of the game showed when we lifted our intensity, we dominated. Now, if you could have played like with half of that for 2 quarters of the game, you probably would have won by like 3-4 goals.
Yep, and then lost the following week.
And the thing is with finals and GWS and all that sort of stuff, if you could have done that early, you probably would have knocked the belligerence out of them and you would have been able to just coast, because they would have got 4 or 5 goals down. They might have tried and they might have said, fuck it, we can't do it. Whitfield's out, Green's out. And it's all about the psychology of football. It's like when you get a sniff, you pursue it. When that sniff's been snuffed out, and then you're just sort of going, oh fuck, it's too hard, and players start thinking about the end of the season and the focus goes, and it just turns into a shitty tempo type final, which happens. But we didn't do that, and that was really, really disappointing.
No, I agree.
Any final thoughts about this Mark Robinson of the game?
No. The bit, I guess, that also frustrates me is you lost the grand final by a kick. You've now lost a prelim by a kick. You've done... I suppose you can comfortably say they've done exceptionally well, considering the impediments with the injuries over the 2 years. And it makes you pissed off when you think about, if we didn't have all these fucking injuries, how good we could have possibly have been in the last 2 years. We could have won 2 flags. But now the opportunity's passed. You don't know what next year.
I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. No, we're reset.
The other point of frustration for me is essentially with the Beams thing now, you've shot yourself in the foot. We've got nothing to jump into the next draft with. When's our first pick? 36 or something?
I think our first pick is 2024.
Yeah, unless you're going to start trading away things of value, I don't know where we're going to start getting these players in. You're going to have to either trade for them, or you're going to have to try and find another Miacek or something out there in seniors land, in the waffle or something.
I don't think they have anything to trade, though.
No,
without sort of totally...
You've invested a lot of time into re-signing a lot of these players. I don't think you're going to turn around and dump them at the same time.
So, I mean, who would you trade that has value? Darcy Moore.
Saipon.
So, I don't think Sobodom's going to have the value that people expect. He's 29.
Idiots out there will pay.
And he's going on 29, so I don't think you're going to get like anything major for him. The guys that would have some value are Darcy Moore. That's going to be depreciated by the fact that he's got chronic hamstrings.
No, yeah.
I'm not saying I'll trade him. I'm just talking about who would have value. The Goey will have a lot of value, but you're not going to trade him because then you're just actually shooting yourself in the foot, which is pretty appropriate. Collingwood and Jaden Stevenson, and they're sort of your free young guns for the future. And then you get guys like Maynard and all that who are going to bring some value. But again, it's like, what are you losing from the side? It's not like you have a surplus of these players.
No, that's right.
It's not like you've been recruiting, trading, drafting like GWS have, and just this stockpile of tools that you can just sort of farm out as needed. You don't have anything. The depth at that club is really shallow. The list management is going to be interesting with the older players and the guys who are injured and how that's all going to work.
Well, I read the other day that there's a flagging up to 9 changes, 9 delisments.
But that was by Tom Clown.
Well, he's fed though, I would suspect.
Well, I expect he's fed. He's a pudgy bastard. But you look at, well, even if it's 9, I mean, I don't know, but it's whatever it's going to be, the profile of that list has a soft underbelly that at some point, because you got guys like Brendan Crocker who you wouldn't expect to survive a cull, and then you got older players like Reid and Varco.
Well, the attrition of age, it has to be a definite, because at some point you've got to sever your ties and start cultivating that young talent.
But the thing is, who do you bring in? You get rid of Varco, and then you go, okay, let's bring in the next best thing. But the first pick we have is at 115 in the draft. It's like, all right, well, maybe keep Varco on for another year and finish last and get. Anyway, we'll talk about list management another point. Just to me, it's really going pear shaped on them, or it has the threat of going pear shaped, and they've now spent 2 years top 4. And I understand winning premierships are hard, but geez, you had 2 really good chances at it.
Very good chances.
And, Richmond used to be a laughing stock, but you got to give them credit for, well, they won the flag for one.
And they're most likely going to win another one.
And they've backed up their, last year they were a little bit probably disappointing in the prelim, whether we just smashed them or they were a bit scratchy and then we smashed them, whatever the case might be. They missed their opportunity there after finishing top. But they've backed it up. They're now back up there. They bore themselves through the little injury run they had, and now they're raging hot favourites to win a second flag in 3 years. So, you can mock them, or you could mock them, but you can't anymore because they're doing what they need to do. And that's what I think really good clubs do. They do what they need to do to achieve the ultimate. And we just don't seem to have that ruthlessness in our character to go, hey...
There's one thing, just to go off on a tangent for a second. Watching the Brownlow tonight, they all looked really quite flat at the table. So maybe there's the potential. Look, I imagine they are hurting.
I thought they were hurting.
There needs to be a hurt to the point where it's actually going to drive you to go one step further next year. Yeah, I think your entitlement comments are pretty much on the ball, and I don't think we carried enough of that hurt from last year into this year thinking we were just going to improve because we're going to get all these players back. We started the season, we got all the press releases at the start saying that pretty much everyone's fit and firing, there's barely anyone on the injury list, and then all of a sudden they dropped off quicker than a leopard's dick, and then we had a hospital infirmary instead of a training facility out there, and then it just went back to the status quo. And we're winning games, we're still doing that. I think the mindset was just going to be, well, it'll click and come good. But maybe this is just the absolute kick in the nuts that they need.
Oh, yeah, we can keep living in hope. I mean, I think the disappointing thing for me is injuries at Collingwood aren't just injuries.
That's the number one.
The terrifying thing is injuries just threaten to become chronic. It's like Elliott did a hamstring and then he was like out for 6 weeks or something, and they always said he was going to come back in. I mean, the Goey did a hamstring, they said 10 days. He came back for 15 minutes and then he was gone again.
Will Kelly had he cut his toenail in the wrong direction, and 3 months later he still couldn't run.
Darcy Moore had issues where he went off several times. So it doesn't feel like they rehab injuries. It just feels like they get them to the point and it's like, okay, you're just back on the assembly line before you return and manufacture the next injury.
And it's like, there's that rumour that came out, I think it was yesterday, that Elliott's off to Hawthorn as a free agent. And if he fucking goes there, they will fix him pre-season and he'll play 6 years and never miss another game. And you just don't get that sense with us that we just have the understanding about how to do that.
Well, the query,
I'd be off poaching everybody else's fitness department.
Well, the query is, is it the medical staff don't know how to do that, or they do know how to do that, but then there's contributing factors outside of their control, like the surface of their training paddock, that...
Oh no, it replicates the moon's surface quite nicely.
But is that what it is? It's like, we got the players back, but you're running on this shit, so they're just going to be prone to break down again. I don't know. I mean, it annoyed me that Collingwood came and said, no, there's no problem here. It's like, well, no, there fucking is. For 8 years, you've been in the top 8 for injuries, and I reckon of those 8 years, probably the bulk of them you've been in the top 4, and I reckon definitely you've been number 1 for about 3 of them. And it's ridiculous.
Well, let's look at something.
Well, yeah, probably the wrong thing. So that frustrates me that this has been going on for a while. They even talked about it in an AGM like about 4 or 5 years ago. They go, yeah, we're going to address these soft tissue injuries. 4 or 5 years later, they're still going. And the reason
it's not getting worse.
Don't really query it is just because they're now used to it. And you need these journalists to finally come out and talk about the injuries after we fucking talk about them often enough. They go, well, maybe there is something. I mean, it only took them 8 years to click to it. But hey, Collingwood gets a lot of injuries. But anyway, I mean, it's really deflating and...
Oh, it is. It's I feel intensely flat. Yeah, I'm sure that'll evaporate, but losing the grand finals, dog. I mean, it's one of the worst feelings in the world. But this, as you said before, it actually feels just as close because it's just a waste. I feel like it's a waste. Yeah, the whole year we've...
Well, let's say...
Pissed it away.
Going, you're around my age, you're probably about 10, 15 years older, but...
I am now after this weekend.
If you look at, just in the modern era, okay, you look at the prelims we've played. We won 2018, obviously. We won 2011, won 2010. We got smashed in 2009, and we lost by a kick in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I look at those games, those prelims, I think, 2009 I was disappointed, but I walked away thinking Geelong and Kilda were clearly above us. And 2007, Geelong were miles ahead of the pack. And I walked away disappointed, obviously, but it didn't feel this soul-destroying because this year it was like, oh, hang on, you've actually lost one from a position of gross favouritism.
Yeah.
And that's something you generally wouldn't do in the prelim because you're really good at prelims. So you've actually squandered an opportunity. Now, whether you would have went on and still lost to Richmond in the grand final, who knows, but you've deprived yourself of that chance because when it came down to the crunch, you couldn't take GWS's best shot and then give it back to them, given their side was depleted and we had everything going for us and you just didn't know how to do it, couldn't do it, wouldn't do it.
And that's the thing, too. I mean, look, in some ways, you almost view this as a relief thing because we're not going to go through another grand final loss because you can't not help but look back at our 2 finals performances and across the 2 games we played about 2 good quarters.
Yeah.
That's just not good enough to win a flag.
No.
And if we're going to go there and get smashed, then what's the whole point of it all? It's concerning about the way that we didn't really fire in the finals this year. Considering that everything conspired to try and make this a success, we didn't respond accordingly and take advantage of that situation.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think there's a lack of strength of character in the club?
Oh, I definitely think that's the case.
So,
but I'm old school. I think there has to be a requisite amount of... mongrel, because I can't say the other word, about them. And look, I understand the world's a different place now, and the dynamic of men in sport is clearly shifting towards this brotherhood of love and all that sort of thing. But ruthlessness gets you a hell of a lot further quicker. To beat something down still has its place.
But see, in my opinion, you don't need to be criminal to be ruthless.
No. Don't get me wrong. Unless, of course, it was a grand final, I did advocate that everyone just goes out and smashes everyone and wins at any cost because whatever it takes.
The thing I was going to say, if you look at the Hawthorn side that three-peated, and you look at the premiers who've won since then, I mean, Bulldogs, Richmond, West Coast, they've all had that ruthlessness. I mean, the Dogs just manufactured it for like that 4-week period. You never sort of really looked at them and thought they were a really tough side in that way. But they all had that single-minded ruthlessness of that this is where we're going to get to our objective. And, the 2010 Collingwood team, I don't think actually had that. They had a ruthlessness of ability where they were crushing opponents. They weren't like a mongrel side. The 1990 side was definitely a mongrel side. It was like a scary physical side. But we lack both those components. There's not a ruthlessness of skill. I think I remarked to someone, I can't remember, pre-game, that going on the train into the game, I was thinking about the silencing. It really reminds me of a Tommy Hafey side of there's some cream at the top, but then there's a lot of sort of role players, and all very much like a Malthouse 2002, 2003 side.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have that.
And they're the ones you need to lift, and they're the ones that win you these games in these situations.
But the thing is, class is always going to outweigh that battling component, but we lack that genuine class at the top end. I mean, I think even Injector going into that game, we probably would have won.
Mm-hmm.
And we lack that ruthlessness of mongrel to just sort of run over the top of them and, really just have that focus of, if you're going to get in my way, I'm going to run through you, and it's going to be totally legal, but you're going to feel it.
Yeah.
And we didn't have either of those, and in the end we just wilted and said, well, give us your best shot. And he said for about 15 minutes when we came at him. And this is the thing that annoys me the most, is that 15 minutes showed we had that capacity and we just did not produce it. I know GWS played well, but if we could do that for that 15 minutes, it wasn't because GWS just said, yeah, we're 5 goals up, we can, relax now. They were still playing their game. It was just at that time we finally lifted to match their intensity. And then, Buckley said in his press conference, if we could have produced that earlier, it would have been a different result probably.
Yeah, and I still think some of that comes back to the extended break. It's killing
the
top
me.
4. Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
No, that's enough. I'm done with it.
Alright, we'll probably be back to talk about the list management and other joyous things. So this is coming after the Brownlow medal. A big congratulations to Brodie Grundy for winning the Brownlow.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no, it wasn't. He came 6th, but I believe the Collingwood website is celebrating.
Yep.
Coming 6th.
Yeah, look, and, give him acknowledgement, that sort of thing, but seriously.
I know, well done Grundles and the others who've polled, but geez, I would, pretty much every player who finished above him, I would think, geez, I'd love that guy at Collingwood, because
absolutely
they're all match winners. I'm not saying Grundy isn't, but we've talked about that. So we'll see you.
Probably after the trade or the draft or whatever.
I don't know when that is. Don't know, don't care. You shit me, Collingwood.
Yep.
Later.